Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our Biking to Work in the San Diego region webinar. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes, but in the meantime, we're going to put up a quick poll really fast while everybody gets logged in. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining our webinar this morning. Thanks for taking that quick poll too. It looks like a number of you are still bike commuting during this time. I know a lot of you are currently working from home and wish you were bike commuting, but it's great to see that some of you still are. So thank you again for joining our webinar, Biking to Work in the San Diego region on this would-be Bike to Work Day. Just wanted to let you know we've got more than 500 people that registered for the webinar, so we're really excited to have you all. My name is Phoenix Smith. I'm a senior marketing analyst here at SANDAG. I'm also the Bike to Work Day project manager, and I guess I can't ignore this photo, circa 1990. This is myself and my sister biking. I have to admit that some of the outfit that you see here was part of the design inspiration for our 30th annual 90s throwback design. And yes, that's me wearing a helmet, safety first, and then a little then and now for you. That's my son on his very first balance bike. So before we get started, I just want to cover a couple of housekeeping notes for you. There's a box on the right-hand side of your screen for questions. Feel free to type those in at any stage. We'll be reviewing those, but we are all going to hold the questions till the very end so that we can get to everybody at once. We're recording this webinar this morning, so all attendees will be emailed a copy right after the webinar this afternoon in case you'd like to share it with any of your colleagues. And we're going to be conducting a few more polls throughout the webinar. We have heard from GoToWebinar that there have been a couple of glitches here and there. So if you're having any trouble answering the poll, you're welcome to type your answer into the question chat box so we can see it there. You'll be counted. We've also heard that if you try minimizing your screen, taking out a full screen, that helps to enable the poll as well. So with that, let's talk about our agenda this morning. We're going to have a quick welcome from our SANDAG Vice Chair and City of Encinitas Mayor, Catherine Blakespear. We're very happy to have her this morning. We'll do a quick overview of SANDAG and our iCommute program. I'm going to give you an update on the status of the 30th annual SANDAG Bike to Work Day. And then we'll jump into some regional BIKEWAY program updates with Alison and Natalie Cushman of SANDAG. And then finally, last but not least, Kevin Baross from the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition will be joining us, and he's going to be giving you some tips and tricks for bike commuting basics. And like I mentioned before, we'll save time at the end for a Q&A session. So let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our SANDAG Vice Chair and City of Encinitas Mayor, Catherine Blakespear. She is a bike enthusiast and a regular participant of Bike to Work Day, and we really enjoyed having her support on the addition of the most recent portion of our coastal rail trail in the Cardiff and Encinitas region. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mayor Blakespear.
Well, thank you very much for having me. My name is Catherine Blakespear, and I'm the Encinitas Mayor, as well as the Vice Chair of SANDAG's Board of Directors. And I want to thank you for joining us today for the Bike to Work in San Diego Region webinar. I am actually wearing my shirt from Bike to Work Day 2019. I don't know if you can see it. I can't see myself very well, but in solidarity with the effort, because we want to continue biking places, especially now, because biking is easier now with fewer cars on the road. So if you have thought about biking but haven't yet done it to get to work or to do your errands, go to the market, pick up medicine, do your exercise, now is an excellent time to get out on your bicycle. So I'm just going to say a few words about what's happening in Encinitas and around the county. So my family and I, we do ride our bikes a lot, especially now with the kids home from school. I want to thank the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition for being a partner in this. I don't know if you all saw Twitter, but they have this really cute little thing on Twitter of a man who's put his biking shoes into this little tiny bicycle and he's riding it on the road. It's a very funny little thing, but it shows that you can ride at all different levels and in all different ways. It's a really funny little GIF. And in Encinitas, one of our goals is, one of the things that I've been working on the most as the mayor, and before that on the Encinitas City Council, is to make it easier to bike and walk through improving our infrastructure. Studies show that when people feel safe on a bike, they are more likely to ride. And so we have been focused on projects that make them feel safe riding. And this will help us move the needle, to have more people riding their bicycles, more people outside, feeling safe, going to our public places, parks, schools, work, everything people do, especially when we get back in a post-pandemic world. Hopefully we'll have made a lot of improvements to our public streets in this time, and we'll have reconsidered how we use that public space. Since 2013, SANDAG has been planning and building the San Diego Regional Bikeway program that is adding 70 miles of new and connected bikeways in the region. And one project I'm particularly proud of is the Coastal Rail Trail in Cardiff that opened in Encinitas just a little over a year ago. There was just a one-year anniversary a couple days ago. And this has been a wonderful amenity for our city and for our region, where visitors and residents can enjoy our scenic coastline and connect to local destinations on this coastal rail trail. It's 1.3 miles, and it is heavily used immediately from the first day it opened. So one thing that I'm excited to share is a pilot program that SANDAG has launched this week that will help our local cities and the county to provide more opportunities for people to bike and walk and enjoy their neighborhoods. So this is a pilot program that would award up to $5,000 to each jurisdiction, so each city or county in the San Diego County region, to assist with the implementation of a temporary shared streets projects. So that's anything that the jurisdiction might be coming up with that would make it easier for people to have social distancing outside on the sidewalk, to walk or bike, and to reclaim some of that public space so that it can be utilized for people who are outside of their cars. This program would create slow streets in communities, giving more space for biking and walking. So with that, SANDAG is accepting applications through Friday, May 22nd. More information is available at sandag.org/shared streets. That is sandag.org/shared streets. And I want to wish you all a happy Bike Month, and thank you for joining us today.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor Blakespear. And I'm sorry we weren't able to see you on your webcam, but you sounded great and we really appreciate that welcome message. I echo your suggestion, to seize the day. Now is a great time to get back on your bike and get some fresh air and enjoy biking with your family during this time. Thank you again for joining us today. So let's do another quick poll to see how things have changed for you. How often are you riding your bike right now compared to before the stay-at-home orders went into effect? So we'll put that poll up on the screen now for you. And like I mentioned earlier, if you're having any trouble participating in the poll, you're welcome to put your answer into the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, or try minimizing your screen, and maybe that will enable the poll feature for you. All right, it looks like it's kind of across the board. Some people aren't riding at all, some people less than before, but there are a lot of people that are riding much more than before, which is really encouraging. I'm glad to see that. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about SANDAG and our iCommute program. SANDAG, or the San Diego Association of Governments, is our regional planning agency, and we're responsible for the long-term vision of San Diego County. We're made up of representatives from the 18 cities in our county and the county of San Diego. And we help to answer questions like, what will our region look like in the future? Where will we live? How will we get around? How can we fuel our economy while still preserving the environment and taking care of the needs of all of our residents and stakeholders? And then I wanted to share a little bit about our iCommute program. This is our transportation demand management program at SANDAG, and we encourage transportation alternatives to help reduce traffic congestion and greenhouse gas emissions. We assist commuters with transit solutions, a subsidized van pool program, a guaranteed ride home program, information about teleworking, and regional support for biking, among other things. We also assist our local businesses and employers in helping them to build commuter benefits programs that will help to save time, save money, and help the environment. We even host our regional bike map, which is available in print copies as well as on our website. And we have our bike locker program. So we have secure bike parking at more than 60 locations region-wide. So let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about our Bike to Work Day postponement. Since the early 1990s, SANDAG has been involved in encouraging people in the San Diego region to choose biking as an everyday transportation choice. And while our 30th annual SANDAG Bike to Work Day event has been officially postponed to next year, we decided to postpone really just because we're committed to hosting a fun, safe, and healthy event for all of our participants. And we really feel that it's our responsibility to protect the participants and our staff and our fabulous volunteers. So we're officially postponing the event, the 30th anniversary of our event, until Thursday, May 20th, 2021. I've been working on this project for about 6 years now, and I can tell you that I'm right there with you and feeling the disappointment that we couldn't get out there today. I know the event is like Christmas for some of you. A lot of you collect those t-shirts or you compete against each other in trying to see how many pit stops you can visit that morning. For me, the event is really all about encouraging people who have never tried bike commuting before but have been curious to get out there and experience the camaraderie with their friends or their colleagues and the support of all of our wonderful volunteers and pit stop hosts. So it's a great opportunity. And of course, the weather today is beautiful, such a shame, but I hope that you'll get out today and get on your bike, maybe by yourself or with your family. I know I've seen quite a few of you out there already this morning. So shifting gears, SANDAG has been putting together a variety of digital options to continue to support you as you go by bike. So we just launched our virtual bike education services. I've always offered employer bike services and also services to schools, but now we have some virtual options. So employers can now register on our website for a virtual bike commuting class or a virtual bike safety check, which is really cool because you can actually jump on with a bike technician and they can help you troubleshoot anything. We've also launched through our Walk, Ride, Enroll to School program an online module about biking and traffic safety. And this is great for kids instead of an in-school assembly. I know a lot of kids have been riding their bikes now more than ever. So this is an interactive online module that any K through 12 school in the county of San Diego can register for. I know Mayor Blakespear also announced our new pilot program for the shared streets, and we're really excited to see different cities throughout the region be able to implement some slower street features so that our residents can get out there and enjoy some safer streets when they're biking and walking. And just a reminder that May is still Bike Month, so there are still a lot of activities going on that you can participate in. The San Diego County Bicycle Coalition is hosting a Love to Ride campaign, so check that out on their website. You can register. I know they've got a challenge going with a lot of great prizes. And then stay tuned for the fall. The National Bike to Work Week is now in September. And then, of course, California Clean Air Day on October 7th, excuse me. We hope you'll consider opportunities to go by bike this month and throughout the year. Now, I know I've received a lot of emails. You guys have been asking about what's going to happen to that cool design and that really retro purple t-shirt. Well, rest assured, we're preserving the design. We're going to keep it again for next year. We're postponing this event, so we'll be celebrating the 30th anniversary in 2021. So we'll be bringing back that purple t-shirt that a lot of you voted on. Have to give a quick shout out to one of our graphic designers, Ryan Chung, who did an awesome job executing this throwback 90s design that so many of you have loved. So thanks for the encouragement, and we'll be excited to bring this back next year. Also wanted to let you know, as for registration and pit stop applications, we'll reopen those again next year. So if you've already registered for this year, you'll go ahead and register again next year. But anyone who applied for a pit stop will be keeping a copy of your application. So if there's any information on there that you'd like us to send to you again, or you just want to resubmit the same application, we'll be able to help you out with that to streamline a little bit. Okay, so let's take another quick poll before we get going into the rest of our presentation. I'm curious to see who plans to bike to work once you return to working from the office. So take a second here and log your answer. All right, hopefully you've all had a chance to log your answer on our poll. And it looks like a lot of people are reinstating their bike commute. That's the most popular answer, which is really encouraging to see. And a lot of people too are saying that they plan to bike to work even more than before. So can't wait to see you out there on your bikes. All right, now we're going to transition to the next portion of our webinar. I'd like to welcome Alison Moss. She's an active transportation planner here at SANDAG, and she's going to talk to us today about our regional bike plan and some of the goals and development that goes into that. She'll also be joined by Natalie Cushman. She is a bike program public outreach officer, and Natalie will get into some of the details about our current bike project construction. So Alison, over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Phoenix, and thank you all the rest of the organizers. I'm really happy to be with everyone today. And I will echo the sentiment shared by Mayor Blakespear and Phoenix that it's a pretty exciting time for biking. I see a lot more people biking in my neighborhood, and maybe some folks that aren't traditionally biking. It might not be trips to work, but it's more like everyday trips, which is a big part of what we in the SANDAG Regional Bike Program are trying to do. So perhaps someone's commute to work trip is 20 miles, but they live within 3 miles of almost everything in their neighborhood that they need. Just trying to make it more comfortable for them to choose a bike for some of those trips. So the regional bike plan goals, they're to significantly increase biking, to improve safety, encourage development of complete streets that serve everybody, improve air quality, and also increase support for biking. So who will use these bikeways? Perhaps some gentlemen like these will use the bikeways. To be honest, people who are club riders and really experienced at cycling, a lot of them are pretty comfortable with conditions and facilities as they are. We are looking to expand to our target audience, which is really people who aren't biking today because they don't feel that safe on the streets, roadways, and infrastructure that we have. So moms and kids, families, older people, younger people, school kids, people going to the grocery store. This is just a normalization of biking that we are trying to support. And so the early action program, which Mayor Blakespear alluded to, was approved in 2013, $200 million in Transnet sales tax funds. It'll build 77 linear miles of bikeway, of which 8.8 are open already, and Natalie's going to walk through some of those. And many of them are in design now, so it's actually a pretty exciting time because we have this big slew of projects that's almost ready to be constructed. So you're going to see a lot of change and a lot more bikeability and just quality of life in the region in the next few years. I'll say next several years. So this is an example of kind of what's out there. Maybe some people who are more experienced cyclists wouldn't mind. I'm going to use the cursor actually to just show, you know, if you're riding in this bike lane here next to this high-speed on-ramp type of situation, one would have to merge all the way over to avoid this conflict. So that's not something that the previous slide of people, you know, moms with their kids, maybe elderly people would be willing to do to get to a grocery store or to a park or something like that. Similarly, just sharing the road at a very high speed. So this is posted 45 miles an hour. We know it would probably be a lot faster. It's just not really a tenable proposition to be sharing the street with motor vehicles at that kind of speed. So what would we do instead? In the bikeway program, we just kind of have this general approach of low stress bikeways. And so that means different things given the context. So on a high speed, busier street, we're going to physically separate people who are riding bikes from moving traffic. And that could be with parked cars, as in the slide on the upper right. It could be with bollards or some kind of vertical protection. But this is, you know, it's kind of sidewalk, bikeway, and then the traffic off to the side. It's much more appealing to the majority of people. It's what design they use in European cities with really high rates of bike riding. Then on streets that are more local or should be more local and more slow, like residential streets, we're using traffic calming techniques. So those might be speed humps, neighborhood traffic circles as shown in the left-hand side. We have a lot of those that are currently under development, and Natalie is going to be sharing information about that. And then we have traffic diverters shown on the right, where somebody riding a bike may go through and people driving may not. And that's just, it's not only a nice way to reduce the volume and make people feel more comfortable, having experience use these myself, it feels special. So you're riding a bike and you get to go somewhere that people driving do not. And it really creates a feeling of support for bicycling. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie Cushman, who has some very exciting developments for the program in terms of actual project implementation. She's kind of ear to the ground on everything that's going on. So she's going to share some details with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. I think that provides a great overview of our program and its history, and I'm excited to share some updates about our recent progress and the projects that we're working on right now. So in this first graphic, you'll see where our program is now. Like Alison mentioned, we have this that middle bar, that big set of projects that are going to be ready for construction in the next few years. And we're working on several under construction right now. And then lastly, you'll see that we also have already completed almost 9 miles of our program, which I'll show some examples of in the next slide too. So here you'll see some highlights of bikeway projects that SANDAG has completed so far. We have the Coastal Rail Trail, both in Encinitas and Oceanside. And we're working on another one right now, which I'll show in a few minutes in the Rose Creek area. We have 1 mile of the Inland Rail Trail in the city of San Marcos that was completed. We worked with Caltrans on the SR15 commuter bikeway, which provides a really essential connection between the Upper Mesa and Mission Valley area. And then we have some segments of the Bayshore Bikeway that we worked on in National City in the last few years as well. So now we'll talk about some of the projects that are now in construction, the first of which is the Inland Rail Trail. So we're building 3 more miles right now of the Inland Rail Trail in some areas of the county and the city of Vista. As you can see, we're working right next to the active rail line there, the Sprinter rail line that runs between Escondido and Oceanside, and that's the ultimate alignment vision for the Inland Rail Trail, which will be 21 miles between Oceanside and Escondido as well. And we're also working on the design of 3 more miles of the Inland Rail Trail in Vista that will be under construction within the next few years too as well. Like I mentioned, we're also working on 2 miles of the Coastal Rail Trail in the Rose Creek Bikeway connection, which is a really critical connection. This actually is next to one of our biggest bike to work day pit stops over there at SportRx. That's one of our most popular. So this is a connection that I know a lot of the bike community is really looking forward to seeing completed, and we're looking forward to seeing it at the end of this year, probably in the fall, opening to the public. This picture was a big milestone for the project when we laid this shared use bridge, so bike and pedestrian bridge on the project. The crews have been making steady progress on the project ever since. So we're looking forward to that one. As Alison mentioned, we're now working on some of our first on-street bikeways. A lot of those other projects are off-street shared trails for bikes and people walking. And now we're working in the roadway, doing a lot of that neighborhood traffic calming that's going to make these streets more accessible for people looking to make everyday trips, whether it's to school or to the park or their local restaurant. This is the Georgia Meade and Landis Bikeway projects that we broke ground on at the end of 2019, and we're implementing traffic calming features like you see here with a neighborhood traffic circle on Meade Avenue. And these will reduce the volume and speed of traffic on the streets and make it safer for people who are biking, but not just biking. We're making a lot of pedestrian improvements too that will make it easier for people walking. And there are a lot of schools on these 2 corridors, so hopefully making those trips more accessible to parents and children getting to school. And those are often under 3-mile trips that could, be substituted on occasion by bike or by walking. Finally, we're excited that we're going to be breaking ground this summer on the 4th and 5th Avenue Bikeways projects, and these will run from downtown to Hillcrest through Bankers Hill on 4th and 5th Avenues, over 4 miles of new bikeways, and these will offer some additional protection, as you can see in the left rendering there, with some raised medians and things that will separate the new bike lanes from the travel lanes. And these are really big commuter corridors as well between downtown and those other neighborhoods to the north. So a very exciting thing, and the community has been looking forward to this. This has been under development for some time now, and we're all really excited to see so much progress on the project when it's going to be making this milestone, and it's groundbreaking. So we're really excited about these projects and hope you are too. We're looking forward to starting construction on even more beyond 4th and 5th over the next few years, and hope you'll have a chance to ride them as they open to the public. If you're interested in learning more about any of these projects or the others that are in design or in the planning phases, you can visit keepsandiegomoving.com/bike. That's keepsandiegomoving.com/bike. And you'll see that link listed on a resources slide near the end of the webinar. And Alison and I will be happy to take questions during the Q&A portion about our bike program and any of these bike projects. And now I'll hand things back to you, Phoenix. Thanks.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Allison, for that great update. I know we're all really excited to be able to get out and ride some of these new bikeways as they come online. So thank you for that update. All right, last but not least, we have Kevin Baross. He is an education program coordinator from the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition. Some of you may recognize Kevin. He's been working as a consultant to SANDAG for a number of years for our iCommute bike education program. And he's been providing some great presentations to employers as well as schools for, like I said, a number of years, some great information to be shared here. So thanks for joining us today, Kevin.
Thanks for having me. Those are my qualifications. Taught a whole bunch of classes. I rode my bike across the United States. I met a llama, as you can see. It's been good, my time as a bike educator. We've got a quick poll that we can throw up now before I start going. How often are you getting on your bike if you are working from home? Just because you're not at the office doesn't mean you can't use the bike to get around. So wondering about this one. Cool. Looks like split, less than once a week. We didn't give you the option of 0, and I think that's probably by design, but 2 or 3 times a week is good. That's great. That's one of the neat things that the Bike Coalition does is there's different organizations that focus on different aspects of bikes. Some people ride their bikes around tracks and race, as fast as they can. Other people ride mountain bikes and only on trails. The Bike Coalition focuses more on commuting by bike, getting around from point A to point B by bicycle. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Specifically, I wanted to start with talking about rules of the road. The thing to remember about this is, well, the first thing to remember is that what I'm going to do today is just sort of the shortened down version of the short class. So if there's any technical details I skip over, you're welcome to ask about those later on. But the overview is just that the rules of the road are the same essentially for cars and bicycles. Things like first come, first served apply to both bicycles and cars. So if a car gets to an intersection before a bicycle, first come, first served still applies. The wave is a nice gesture, but it sometimes can get confusing. Obeying traffic control devices, things like stop signs and stoplights, those apply to everybody. One of the reasons is that it makes us safer. The other thing is that it just makes us more predictable. If someone arrives at a stop sign, no matter what the vehicle that they're using is, I know what's going to happen. They're going to stop. That's what I'd like to believe anyway. And then things like slower traffic on the right, passing on the left. These are all concepts that a car driver follows, and these are all concepts that a bike driver also should be following. All that being said, the issue of crashes is, a reality. The word that I'll use throughout this is crashes and not accidents. This is an example of a crash and not an accident. And it's also an example of the fact that nearly half of all bike crashes that occur completely on your own, solo. So it's far and away the most common type of bike crash. And without naming names, I can think of certain executive directors of certain bike coalitions in certain San Diego cities that have absolutely gotten in solo bike crashes. Riding streets that you've ridden a million times before. I've done it myself. You weren't paying attention, you were looking down, you were looking in the wrong direction, there was gravel on the road, train tracks, whatever else. So these are all causes of bike crashes, and the most common type of bike crash is one that you do completely on your own. The next point that I wanted to mention is this, it's a sort of special phrase, multimodal commuting. Becoming a bike commuter or introducing bike commuting into your life more doesn't necessarily mean that you have to buy brightly colored spandex and a helmet that makes you look like you're racing across France. This can be just one aspect of getting around. I like to say that the Bike Coalition isn't an anti-car organization, we're just a pro-options organization. So the trip that you take should match the destination. Not every trip should be reaching for the car keys. There are a whole bunch of different options that you have here in San Diego specifically, and I like using as many of them as I can. So there's the bus, there's the trolley, there's maybe Lyft or Uber or scooter or bike or skateboard, rollerblade. There's all these different ways that you have to get around. And if I'm carrying a whole bunch of heavy things from, San Ysidro to Oceanside, then I'm gonna, pick a different type of trip, a different type of vehicle for that trip than I would if I was just going to the grocery store and back. We don't recommend hanging the gallon jugs of milk off of the handlebars, though. It's not a good look. Or put the bike in the car, drive halfway to where you're going, take the bike out, and then bike the rest of the way, and then tell everyone that you rode the whole way. It makes you look very impressive, and we encourage bragging. Every bus has those 2 racks on the front that you can see there. For bicycles, it's my understanding that we'll get up to 3 going forward. Trolleys have space for bikes, so it's a neat way to, it's an option that you have as a bicyclist that you don't have as a car driver. And so utilizing as many different types of transportation as you can when you get out is a good way to not only see the world, but also see more of it, I think. So the other neat thing about riding a bike is that in addition to using different types of transportation, you also have different infrastructure. So when I think about getting around in a car, I think about freeways. But when I think about getting around on a bicycle, I have all these different options. SANDAG and iCommute has put together this really fantastic map, and it works best, I think, to supplement the other services that are out there to help you get around. So if I use Apple or Google or whatever it is and tell it, hey, I want to use a bike and I want to get from A to B, it may tell you the most direct, but it doesn't do a good job, it doesn't do any job of breaking down the different types of infrastructure that exists for bicycles. So maybe adding a half mile onto my trip, but using a completely separated bicycle facility is something that interests me. And Google Maps and Apple Maps aren't going to help me do that, but iCommute is. This map exists physically and it exists digitally as well, and it's a great service to use when planning a trip. I want to go over briefly the different types of bike infrastructure that exist and are listed on this map. The first type, class 1, is bike paths. This is an example of a bike path. It's a specific type of thing. So I think a lot of times bike path is used as sort of a blanket term. Anywhere a bike is, that's a bike path. A bike path is, however, a very specific type of infrastructure. This is the bike path that runs along the San Diego River from, SDSU-ish area all the way down to the coast, down to Dog Beach. It's great. It's great because of its lack of cars. That's essentially one of its defining characteristics. That also means a lot of times that you'll have people walking their dogs with the 20-foot long dog leash. Something to look out for, but far and away, it's an example for you to sort of put your head down and ride. You don't have the intersections to worry about as much. You don't have the cars to worry about at all. And it's something that's very clearly defined as being for bicycles. This is a bike path just for you. So if you happen to live at one end and work at the other end, then that's great. But also, if you can find a way to get yourself over to that bike path and get you a little bit closer to where you want to go and use it as one part of your trip, that's a great thing as well. So there's more of these going in, and they're great and unique. Bike lanes, I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with, also a term that gets sort of thrown around to a bunch of different types of things, but it's a very specific type of infrastructure. It's defined by that paint on the road. This is an example of Park Boulevard on heading towards University Heights. You'll notice that this bike lane specifically is striped or painted, not right next to the curb, because it's allowing space for car parking. When the bike lane is striped so close to parked cars that an open door of that parked car is going to get in the way of you as a bicyclist, then the safer thing to do is move either to the left side of that bike lane or even all the way out if you need to. It's a good example of where you're supposed to be as a bike rider, but there's any number of reasons why you need to leave the bike lane. In fact, you'll notice the bike lane becomes dashed before the intersection. That's a sign that you as a bicyclist should probably move closer to the center of the lane unless you're turning right. And it's a sign that cars are going to move into that bike lane in order to turn right. Class 3 is bike route. It's the one that's most commonly seen. It's the most frequent on that bike map. And that's because it's the easiest to put in. It's essentially just a sign that says bike route. Oftentimes it's got directional arrows that say Balboa Park, 1 mile this way, UC San Diego, however far this way. And it's a bike route because it's preferable to a parallel street for some reason. Maybe it's wider, maybe the volume of traffic is lower, but it's also sort of functions as a self-fulfilling prophecy in that encourage people to ride there more. So some people ride there more, so you're more likely to see bicyclists there, so people interact with them better, so more people ride there, and so on and so forth. It's also, again, a good reminder that you're where you're supposed to be. If you're riding your bike and you're feeling unsure of yourself and you look up and you see the sign that says this is a bike route, you realize, okay, this is great. I feel good about myself. I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. So that's why I like them. And then finally, class 4 is the cycle track. This is a picture of the downtown cycle track. These are currently on 6th, on Beach, and on J downtown. The first thing to notice about it essentially is remember the picture of the bike lane. We've got the sidewalk, and then we've got the car parking, and then we've got the bike lane. For this one, it's been switched in a way. So now we have the sidewalk, we have space for the bicycle, and then we have the car parking, and then we have the travel lane. So I, as a bicyclist, don't have to worry about sharing that lane with traffic anymore. Now I've got my own space, they've got their own space, and everybody's happy, hopefully. You're still interacting with cars at intersections, so that's still something to look out for. It's good infrastructure. The best infrastructure in the world is never going to be a perfect substitute for at least some education, and that's why I do what I do. Education is important and infrastructure is important, so finding a way to make those both work together is a good thing. This is unique. It's two-way on one side of the street. It's oftentimes going to be used by scooters and skateboards and things as well. It used to be used as additional parking for delivery trucks, but hopefully we're moving away from that a little bit. The last type is not one that's mentioned on the bike maps specifically, but it's one to think about, neighborhood streets. So maybe instead of taking El Cajon Boulevard, a busy street with multiple lanes, I move one block over and now I'm on Howard. And so now I'm in a more neighborhood environment, fewer stop lights, more stop signs, lower volume of traffic, probably wider streets, maybe even without the double yellow line. And so it's an option that you have as a bicyclist that allows you a little more comfort. And it's not something you'd think about when you're driving a car. Again, when I'm driving a car, I think about freeways, and when I'm driving a bicycle, I have all these other options that I can use. And so it's nice to be able to use as many of them as I can. I didn't want to leave without mentioning sharrows specifically, because we've done a great job of putting them everywhere, but we haven't done a great job of telling people what they mean. And every class I teach, I like to ask, what is it that you think they mean? What is your impression of, what do you assume when you see the sharrow on the road? Number one answer is that it's a speed boost and you ride over it and it makes you go super fast. That's not what it is. It's also not technically a sign that says bikes are allowed to use this road. It's also not technically a sign that says share the road, because share the road applies to all streets. Bikes are allowed to use these streets. There's a catchphrase that's roads are for people, not just people in cars. So I like those sentiments, but that's not what the sharrow specifically says. The sharrow specifically is there because that lane is too narrow to share side by side with a car. That's the only reason it's there. That lane doesn't have enough space for both a bicycle and a car to be side by side in the same lane. So as a car driver, it's a sign that if there's a bicycle in that lane, no matter where they are in the lane, I need to change lanes in order to pass them. And it's a sign to the bicycle that if there's the sharrow in that lane, I know there's not enough room for a car to pass me safely. So it's better to put myself towards the center of that lane and discourage unsafe passing. It's not something that comes supernaturally, and I'm aware of that, but the more you ride, the more comfortable you get, and the more naturally this all comes. Helmets are great, only if you wear them. Just yesterday, I rode past a guy with a bicycle helmet on without the helmet strapped, just flopping in the wind. And it's going to fly off of your head if you get into a crash. I've always wondered about the lack of commitment there. The question I get fairly often is asking for recommendations on helmets. What's the best brand or what's the best style? And my answer 100% of the time is the same, that the best kind of helmet is the helmet that you want to wear. They are all generally going to be doing the same thing. So if wearing a helmet that looks like Hello Kitty makes you more likely to wear a helmet, then buy the Hello Kitty helmet. They're making helmets with all kinds of different styles, more commuter styles, more racing styles. They're making helmets with all kinds of technology. They've got lights, they've got crash detection, all kinds of different things. So find a helmet that you like the look of. One, because it makes you look cool, and two, because it protects you. And if it can, those are sort of going to help each other. The best kind of helmet is the helmet that you're the most likely to put on your head. So that's basically where I'll leave it. I realized I mentioned Howard and didn't as a street, and didn't mention that that's one of the slow streets that's been implemented recently, which is great. Sort of a sign of the change in bike infrastructure that's happening even in the last couple months. Widening roads, more streets for everybody, and all types of road users. It's a little sad that it's not raining today. I feel like it's rained on every bike to work day, and then the one time we have a nice one, we can't go outside. Frustrating. Okay. So I don't want to leave without mentioning Love to Ride. It's a program that we've signed up with in order to encourage people. It's our way of getting people to ride together separately. So we're going on a group ride together, and we're all over the city. No one's riding next to each other, but you sign up, and there's different challenges. So maybe you agree, like, hey, if you ride 1 day a week for this week, then you're entered into a prize contest and you can win. And we're giving away bikes. We're giving away cash, money to people that fulfill the requirements and ride. And it's not even about distance. It's just about riding for a frequency, getting out. Maybe you haven't ridden in a long time, and then you start to ride, and this is your opportunity to do that. So that's where I will leave it. Thank you guys for having me.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. That was a great presentation. I hope some of Kevin's tips today gave you a little bit more confidence to get back out there, and a good refresher for some rules of the road and the different types of bike paths. Okay, so I just wanted to remind you about some of the biking resources that we have available on our website at iCommuteSD.com/bike. As we've mentioned before, we've got a copy of the regional bike map. You can turn on and off the layers for transit routes and different information that'll help you get on your way with bike planning. We've also got some information about our bike parking program, some bike safety tips on our website that are helpful again, and you can register for the Guaranteed Ride Home program, which will give you a free ride up to 3 times a year in case of an emergency if you're using an alternative commute like biking. All the links for the registration for the bike services that I mentioned that have gone virtual are up there, including our employer bike services and our Walk, Ride, and Roll to School program. And then all the information you need about the status of current bike projects and construction is available at keepsandiegomoving.com/bike. And then finally, like Kevin mentioned, the information about the May Bike Month Challenge with Love to Ride is available at sdbikecoalition.org. Okay, so now we are on to our Q&A portion of our webinar. We've had a lot of great questions coming in. I'm going to do my best to get through these, but please bear with us. And we'll put up some information at the end of our presentation. If we didn't get to your question, feel free to email us. We'd be happy to answer your questions. So, okay, the first question is about our Shared Streets initiative, our pilot grant program. So Natalie or Alison, feel free to jump in here. How can somebody encourage their city to create a Shared Streets initiative?
Sorry, could you repeat how could somebody what?
How could somebody encourage their city to create a shared streets initiative?
I'm not really from the advocacy side of things, but I understand that the shared streets that exist now, I think a lot of organizing was done from the advocate community in the city of San Diego, and I think that was largely Bike SD, probably the Bike Coalition, and then maybe even some folks from Circulate, but I think they worked with some of the council offices and elected officials who then have worked with staff in turn. That's my understanding of how it's gone with these.
Yeah, I would echo those comments. I would recommend reaching out to your, local city council person or, and work with them to see if they can work with their staff, since the cities and the counties will be the ones responsible for submitting applications to the SANDAG Shared Streets pilot program. But yeah, working with an advocacy group to work with your city is another way to leverage your opinions and to make them heard at your local city.
And one more thing I'll add is I think there are a lot of cities that have implemented some pretty great streets and whole networks of streets so far. So if there's anyone who would want to follow up with me, I have probably some resources of guidance of what's been done in other cities that may be useful in having discussions with elected officials.
Great, thank you both for that information. Okay, we've got a resident of North Park who is interested in the Robinson Connector between Florida and Alabama streets, and this would connect Hillcrest to the Landis Bikeway. Alison, can you provide us an update on that project?
Yeah, so that project, we did unfortunately take a little bit of a detour because we thought the design that we had proposed was not going to work for the city, but we're kind of back on the original design. So at this point, we've submitted our final design plans to the city of San Diego. Those are currently being reviewed. We're also doing a constructability review with a third party, and we're working on a right-of-way acquisition piece. So fortunately, all of that is up and running again, looking to begin construction hopefully sometime early next year.
Great, thank you. Okay, another bike project question. I think, Natalie, I'll pass this one over to you. When will the Rose Creek Bikeway be open?
Oh, sorry, I missed the bikeway name.
Sorry, when will the Rose Creek Bikeway be open?
Got it. So yeah, we're excited. We're hoping to see the Rose Creek Bikeway open to the public this fall of 2020. So just a few more months if we all sit tight. The crews are working, making lots of progress. So we're expecting to see it done in the fall.
Thank you. Okay, we've got somebody else who rides on Mead frequently, and they're appreciating the new traffic circles. But understandably, the construction is disruptive. It's taking a long time. Why does it take so long to complete these projects? Natalie, if you want to take a stab, and then maybe Alison could chime in too.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we're working right in the right of way, right in front of people's homes. And we're cognizant of that. And, we understand that there's impacts during construction. The way that we phase some of the intersections is try to mitigate as many impacts to people as possible, allowing people to walk and bike through those intersections. There's a lot of work. The work is a lot heavier than some anticipate when they see bike project. If you remember the picture I showed of the neighborhood traffic circle, that involved a lot of excavation and demolition, and they're working right there in the middle of the roadway. So to get from under the ground all the way back up to the top and get these features installed will take some time, but we've specifically phased the project so that we're not ripping up the road the whole distance. We were only working in 3 major intersections at a time on Mead Avenue. So once those are complete, we'll move along to the next intersection. And that's also to reduce, the impacts corridor wide. So people who are traveling through hopefully won't be as impacted as well.
Yeah, so I'll just add a couple of things. I think if implementing the bike projects is like pushing a boulder up a very steep hill, I think we're kind of near the apex of the hill, and the construction phase is the boulder rolling down the other side. So it may seem slow to other people, but these projects started at around 2012 when I was interning at SANDAG, and the community involvement process, redesign, coordinating with the city, then all of the utility, conflicts and building intensive capital infrastructure. That's taken a long time on the front end, but I think in my view, and I hope that's encouraging to some folks on the call, there's a lot of momentum now. They're in the field and they're happening. So some of these features will be completed and kind of open. The whole project won't be open for a while still, but that's my perspective. And then honestly, the rain has delayed construction quite a bit this winter. I don't know what they do in countries where it rains all the time, but in San Diego, like a lot of things, it rains a little, and we're kind of delayed because of that. So now it's moving into the drier season. I think we'll be able to make more progress at these intersections where extensive work is being done.
Great, thanks for that explanation. That's encouraging to hear. Okay, Kevin, you might want to take this question. Somebody's asking about bike shops and experiencing record sales here in San Diego. So with more people riding bikes, how are we planning to capture and utilize that momentum?
Yeah, it's great. We at the Bike Coalition put in a lot of work to have bicycle shops classified as essential businesses. That wasn't the case early on. And so it's been really awesome to see the success of bike shops in this time. Anecdotally, there's huge numbers of people that are riding bikes now, more than they ever had before. There's a story about someone who found raccoons on my street in their car engine because they've been, letting it sit for so long, which is great. As far as making sure that this is a lasting change as opposed to just sort of a temporary one, one of the things is, making this a habit is something that at least a little bit has come naturally, which is great. It's something that people naturally, now that they have the time to, now that they have the space to, are gravitating towards on their own, and that's awesome. We're doing our part in terms of education by putting on as many of these as we can. Classes like the one I've just done here, classes that last 3 hours, classes that last 2 or 3 weekends. And so there's all these different ways that you can, on your own, find out more information. That being said, I'd love to see that continue. Driver's ed classes don't talk a lot about bicycles. Drivers, DMV tests don't talk a lot about bicycles. So doing everything we can on an individual basis to ride in a predictable manner, ride responsibly, will help the bicycle be viewed as a form of transportation and not just a, fun, distraction. It's a way to get around, and science literally shows that it's the most efficient form of travel in terms of number of calories burned per distance traveled. So on an individual basis, all of us doing our part to ride responsibly can help it be viewed in a better way. And so we just want everyone to do that.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. I've got another question for you here, if you don't mind doing 2 back to back. Somebody's talking about some incidents with cyclists getting doored in the Pacific Beach area.
Sure.
These have been happening more and more, especially in this area for this particular resident has noticed. How can we educate drivers instead of just educating the cyclists or people on bike?
The door situation is a unique one because it's definitely something where the responsibility lies a little bit in both camps. So it's the fault of the car driver for not looking behind them before they open that parked car door, but it's also the fault of the cyclist for riding so close to the parked car door that was an issue in the first place. If there's a situation where the infrastructure is, the lane is so narrow, the traffic is so fast that it's too scary to ride into the lane, than it is to ride right next to that parked car door, then that's a failure of the infrastructure. We need to do something in order to make people feel more comfortable. It reminds me that when I see someone riding their bike on the sidewalk, my first thought used to be, oh, they don't know what they're doing. But really, a lot of times the answer is the infrastructure has failed in that situation. It's made it so that they feel more comfortable on the sidewalk rather than in the street, and that's a bad thing. So there's a specific phrase, the Dutch reach, which is where you're supposed to use your opposite hand in order to reach behind you to get that car door handle to open up the door. And if you get into that habit, the argument is, then it's easier to look behind you before you open that car door. That's a great thing. Looking in your mirror before you open the car door is a great thing. But also, as a bicyclist, riding a little bit further away from those parked cars in order to not have that be an issue in the first place is also a great thing. So again, how do we get that information in the hands of people that are never going to ride a bike in their life? It's a challenge. There's different lobbying efforts that are happening to get those pieces of information, as I mentioned before, in driver's tests and things like that. But the thing that helps me as a bicyclist not do that is experience, being in those scary situations and realizing it's better off for me to be further into the lane, making myself more visible than it is to ride like I'm invisible. Yeah, Alison?
Oh, just one comment from a infrastructure design perspective. If it's a street where it is kind of constrained and the designer can put a buffer between the parked cars and the bike riders, and we expect there to be high turnover for the cars, then we would want the buffer there. So if we ever have enough space to add some kind of buffer, putting it on that side would be better. Now, most people, normal people, you know, it's human nature to want to be away from the moving traffic, but I think that gives a little bit more of a cue to avoid that area. And I think when I lived in Berkeley, they had kind of T's next to the parked cars. I think they were just bounding the parking spaces, but it actually seemed that was about as wide as a door swung open. So I would kind of align myself with the edge there.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're getting really close. Let's try to squeeze in one more question. We have a lot we can't get to this morning. But Kevin, this is probably another great question for you really quickly. How can people get help to improve their bike commuting, their safety, their handling, just overall education? Are there more resources available?
Yeah, there's absolutely more resources available. I'm proud of the work that we've done to transition all of our classes to being digital. We're working on more educational step-by-step videos that will walk you through different practice moves that you can do to make yourself feel more comfortable on the bicycle. At some point in the future, as we had in the past, we'll be putting on these hands-on classes where some of the more successful ones have been 3 hours, where it's an hour of classroom, an hour of on-bike skills, and then an hour of on-street skills. And so taking baby steps on your own, you know, right in front of your house and then right around the block and then right around the neighborhood and work your way up. Just like any other skill, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. On our website, we have educational materials. We're putting on as many classes as we can at this point. And so some of those are employer specific, thanks to help from SANDAG. Some of those are more general classes that anyone can sign up for, but you can find those on our calendar. And find a friend that also rides. That's the neat thing about this Love to Ride program, is that you can motivate each other. You and a friend sign up and you see that they're riding every day and you're only riding once a week, and then you get jealous or embarrassed and then you ride more. So that's a good way to do it. You're not the only one that wants to do this more, and you're not the only one that wants to be better and more responsible. So there's other people out there that are doing this as well, and I recommend finding them.
Okay, thank you. I apologize to many of you that we couldn't get to all of your questions, but here is all of our contact information. We'd be happy to take any questions offline. You can also reach us at iCommute@sandag.org at any time as well, and visit our iCommute website for more information. I really think the volume of participants today speaks highly to the support we have in the region for bike commuting, which has really energized us, and we're really excited to see that. So thanks for understanding and bearing with us during these interesting times, and I wish you all health and safety, and I hope to see you go by bike soon. Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.